Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series here on Apex Racing TV. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the virtual commentary booth is Charles Bushell, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Now tonight we close out Season 3 of the S1 Series here on the Australian sun, the current rising sun of Man Panorama here, Bathurst. One of my favorite tracks in the world, one of my favorite tracks in sim. It's being used by a lot of series right now. The virtual 12 hours is coming up in a few days' time, coming up this weekend. We also have a lot of series here on Apex. I'll be reporting from Bathurst here. But we were talking about that. Considering this is the week of the official Bathurst 12-hour, we're hearing a lot of discussion about BOP, and my colleague Charles was mentioning how the Ferrari may be the car of choice for a lot of these drivers. Maybe, well, it's definitely the car of choice for the drivers in the official 12-hour, but still, I think it may show a lot of speed here in this race. So to pass this off to you, Charles, do you want to elaborate on that and kind of explain to these viewers why the Ferrari is just so quick here at Bathurst?
Yeah, so, managing a team, you get a lot of information from a lot of different guys, and we've got drivers anywhere from, low I ratings up to what I would say are pro level drivers. And to a person, they're just saying that the Ferrari, because of the BOP, is actually, iRacing has actually done the Ferrari a favor by reducing the power. And so it just makes the transitions back on the throttle. It just makes it easier. The car is just very comfortable and very stable around the track. Now, obviously, that's not the case here because that is a specific balance of performance for the 12 hours. But you learn a lot as you go through and you look at all these cars and their behavior. We always talk about horses for courses. Some cars do better on certain tracks than others. If you get a good long straightaway track, you're going to look at those front engine cars, the BMW, the Mercedes, that just have tons of power down the straightaway. Not so great doing the cornering, but if you get a good track like, say, a Suzuka, where you get a lot of high-speed cornering, the Porsche starts to shine. So it's just a matter of, iRacing maybe doing the Ferrari guys a favor this week. But for everything I've heard, the Ferrari is just a fantastic car around Bathurst. So you get a good driver here. We've got a couple of drivers. As we're seeing Spencer Rennsport on the screen now. We also got, I think, a new driver, Daniel Curo, who is in the Ferrari as well. So if they're steady on the throttle, then they could look to have a very, very good result out of this race.
Unfortunately, I believe Daniel Kiro actually left us in the practice session. Left us. That sounded very depressing. That was not the correct terminology from me, but he did leave during the practice session, which, funnily enough, was held in the night when I joined this iRacing session. I was kind of worried that for the opening part of this broadcast, I was like, okay, can we cut to a scenic camera? What do we do? Because you'd cut to a scenic camera in iRacing, and it would just be completely pitch black unless any driver tried to buzz past, in which case you'd just see two bright white orbs just going down the straightaways. This is one of them, the Conrad straightaway. We're seeing Gregory Hovesen, your Season 3 and Season 2 double champion, back-to-back champion here from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. He wrapped it up last time out 2 weeks ago at Mugello, but with a very strange evening in which only 5 cars showed up. He is currently at the top of the pecking order in this qualifying session right now, 0.4 of a second ahead of his teammate Kyle Domark. But we were kind of half joking about this before the start of the broadcast, but we could see it play a role in tonight's race. Really, the only big championship fights is between Kyle Domark and Sammy Hendricks, who's currently at the tail end of the running order in this qualifying session right now in the dying stages, as Gregory Hovesen nearly breaks into the 202s there, a 203.001. That 1,000th of a second, I can imagine, is really, really irking him looking at his timing screen as he completed that lap. But we were kind of half joking about this before the start of the broadcast. We saw it at the end of last season when the S1 Racing Series wrapped up Season 2 at Watkins Glen. We saw that Kyle Domark got let by his teammate Gregory Hovesen to try and help his chances at finishing in P2 in the championship. We could see that tonight, but it'll really rely on Sammy Hendricks having a great turn of fortune and a great turn of pace. Currently not showing a whole lot of pace there at the tail end of the running order right now. Both Audis being the tail runners right now, with Series admin Simon Attrell currently in P8 in this qualifying session right now. Is that a little bit shocking that the Audis are down there? It is for me.
I mean, I like the Audi. I've driven the Audi. I did a full league season in the car, in the first iteration of the Audi R8. And I always make the joke that it at some point in time during a race, whenever you run the Audi, it will try and kill you. It'll do something just completely unexpected. So yes, it kind of does, but no, it really doesn't, because the car obviously is a mid-engine car, big power, with that big V10. And so it's one of those cars that it's a really good car, but you have to just always kind of keep be cognizant of the fact that it's going to do something just bizarre during the course of the race. It's going to take a curb differently for whatever reason, and it's going to try and just it's kind of like riding a wild horse. It's going to try and throw you at some point in time. But no, I think that I guess it is a little odd because it is the first season for the car, right? So normally you see those cars have a little better performance overall, but when you've got those Lamborghinis out there with very, very highly rated drivers in them, it doesn't surprise me that maybe the Audis are on the back foot just a little bit.
Yeah, that is very surprising. You mentioned there that the Audi is new, one of the newest cars, the newest GT3 car, and the fact that it's at the tail end of the order in this qualifying session that has just wrapped up, it's a little bit surprising to me that the Audi is so far back, because when we saw the Ferrari make its debut in the season prior, the Ferrari was really quick but also really unstable. We haven't seen that from the Audi this year, so that's a little bit shocking to me, but maybe next season, I mean, we have Season 2 of 2024 knocking on the door, so I'm sure maybe the Audi will have a big turn of pace. They'll turn up the wick there in terms of the BOP and get a lot of performance out of that Audi. I had the old Audi, then I actually switched to the Porsche, mainly because I had a series here on Apex Racing TV that only ran the Porsche, so that's the only reason why I really got the Porsche. I'm not really a GT3 guy, if I'm being brutally honest. I'm more of an open wheeler, but still, it's one good thing about these GT3 cars. They have their own unique quirks and features and their own little unique flair in terms of how they drive around the racetrack. Certainly BOP plays a role in that. So the qualifying session has wrapped up. I believe we're just waiting for one more driver to pull back into the pits, and then we'll be able to get the race underway. 45 minutes here from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. One more 45-minute race from the season that started all the way back in December of 2023. It's been a very dominant performance from Gregory Hoveson. He's gone 5 for 5 so far this season, but he went 5 for 5 in the first 5 of Season 2, so we'll see. Maybe he can go for the sweep here tonight, but I think we'll take a look at the starting grid here as Gregory Hoveson grabbing another pole position. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he goes for the clean sweep of the poles here, grabbing the pole here at Bathurst. His teammate Kyle Domark will start alongside him in P2. Spencer Retzma there in that Ferrari starting in P3. Eric Starpoli, who's been the only driver to challenge Hoveson and Domark at the front, another Delta Sport driver. He'll be starting this race in P number 4. Jonathan Newman will be starting this race in 5th. Justin Dive Bomber Barrera in the number 419 BMW, the only BMW in this field, will be starting in 6th. And we have Mitch Buenaventura there in P7, Simon Admiral Series founder in P number 8. Then Sammy Hendricks rounding at your field, and Daniel Ciro there at the tail end of the field, I believe, will not be taking the start in a few moments' time. Strategy will play a big role into this race. I'll pass this off to you here real quick, Charles, before these drivers set off on this very short and parade lap. How big of a percentage would you have to say will the strategy play a role in this race?
Well, if there's team orders involved, then, obviously there might be some serious strategy, because we do have the battle for P2 in the championship. So if Hendricks gets a good run and can make his way up the field, then, that puts the onus on Hoveson and Domark to start thinking about things for later on in the race. But, it's basically just, this is a extremely difficult track. You've got a 45-minute race. You've got a pit stop. You're going to have to pace yourself. What your car's, you've been driving the car now for 2 months. What the car is capable of, what its pluses are, what its minuses are. So you have to be aware of that, and that has to factor into your race.
I think there's going to be mistakes of plenty. This track is technically a street circuit. It doesn't have a street circuit feel, especially going through the chase here and going through the chicane at the end of the Conrad straightaway, the penultimate, and what would be the term for before the penultimate corner, the second to last and third to last corners on this racetrack. We saw a lot of drivers come to blows there towards the end of the race in Season 2, so we'll see if that is the case here in the race here. Coming up from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series, all the drivers will be making their way around the final corner, and the field is now in the hands of Gregory Hoveson, who's taking a jump early on to grab the lead of the race, heading into turn number 1, hell corner as they call it. Turn number 1, we'll see if any of these drivers make a mistake or beach themselves on that outside curb, which are vicious at this track, and we already see a crash there, and that's Starpoli. That's another driver. I believe that's, oh my God, plenty of drivers already going off. As you said, half the field there already involved in accidents. I saw Starpoli involved in that. That was Spencer Retzma involved in that as well. I believe Simon Attrell got a piece of that as well. We're taking a look at a replay here, and just a little bit of hard racing very early on. And Starpoli actually dipped a wheel into the grass, got him a little bit sideways, and just augured all the 5 drivers getting a piece of that crash there. So already basically half the field is already taken out of this race, or certainly taken out of contention, and having a good chance of grabbing a great result here tonight.
Yeah, that's a pretty sad way to get the race started. But as we see that Domark off the wall there, coming through, I think that's McPhillamy Park. But yeah, I think that's the reason it's called Hell Corner. Is obviously you get on the outside and you're too wide with cold tires, and you get off of the racing surface into the dirt, the grass. Very difficult to control the car, and you see the end result is now the 2 cars made contact, and then all the cars behind them got caught up in it. So, horrible start for them. So now it's just going to be this front group of it looks like 4 cars, Hovis, Domark, Barrera, and Newman. Barrera showed some speed this year. The BMW is good enough that it can keep pace with the Lamborghinis. It's got some good straight line speed. He's just going to be very careful of his front tires. The front engine cars, which we don't have the Merc, but we do have the single BMW, has a tendency to kind of eat the fronts, and you need to be on point in your cornering here. You don't need to be washing out those front tires at any point in time during this race.
Now, with the crash and all the drama that ensued as a result of it, Sammy Hendricks, who we mentioned at the start of this broadcast when we were in the qualifying session, was very much on the back foot in his fight to maintain to maintain a decent result and possibly grab P2 in the championship from Kyle Domark. That is basically all but assured that he will not be able to win that battle. Currently in 9th, they're all Starpoli, Admiral, and Hendricks are still in the pit lane now, waiting for their cars to tow all the way around this track. It'll feel like forever. I would not be too shocked if some of those drivers just don't even bother to rejoin the track. Certainly Hendricks, his fight at this point is to try and maintain that P3 spot that he has, because currently the P3 runner in this race, Justin Dive Bomber Barrera, is not too far behind him in the championship. Missed out on Mugello, as many of these drivers did. They took that as their drop week. So I think Barrera is pretty much in the catbird seat to grab P3 in the championship, which would be a very good result for a driver that we've seen not the best season out of, if I'm being brutally honest. We saw him contending for podiums all throughout Season 2. He is currently running in a podium position right now, feeling quite racy with Kyle Domark right in front of him. But in terms of the results that we've actually seen from him, it hasn't been as flashy, shall we say, as we saw in Season 2 earlier on. Actually, it was last year between September and December when Season 2 of this series was running. But still, the fact that he is in the catbird seat to possibly grab P2 in this race and grab P3 in the championship is a little bit shocking after how the season has gone for him thus far, and we'll see, not going for a move, heading into the chase. Still very shocking that he's in this position.
Yeah, it really is, but he's you know, he's made a couple mistakes, hasn't been anything really major that I can remember. So, you know, he's got a chance, and, you know, obviously he looks like he's wanting to battle for P2 in the race. And if he can get in front of Domark, that obviously increases his chances of capturing that final podium position for the championship.
That would be a very, I guess shocking would be the word, as we see now Admiral and all the drivers. I believe Hendricks has rejoined the fight as well. Starpoli still stuck on pit road. You can see he's now been in the pits for 4 minutes. It'll feel so agonizing. I gotta wonder, is there some kind of issue for Starpoli, or is he just not rejoining the race? I won't be too shocked if he didn't. He was probably eyeing up a podium in this race. Just sadly for him, it will go all to naught because he's going to be multiple laps down here and will just be entirely out of the conversation of even making up a position, because I'm sure with how long he is on pit road right now, Hendricks and Admiral may lap him next time by, so that'd not be I think Starpoli, I would not blame him one bit if he decided to just bail out of the session and punch out very early on. He's been a driver that is a little bit of a standout star. We saw him at Daytona in his series debut, and he was giving Hovison and Domark the strongest challenge they've seen in the 12 races I've covered with the series ever since it made its debut here on Apex Racing TV back in September. Starpoli is a very good driver in that Porsche. He knows how to make that thing work, but such a shame that just bad luck is catching him out in these races.
Yeah, that's really it. He's just been snake bit. I mean, obviously he started late, so he was not going to be in contention for the championship. So he was just going out trying to get race wins. And you're right, at Daytona he was having a fantastic run, and then got into trouble with our front 2 cars, with the 2 Lamborghinis, and basically ended his race then. And so it just seems like ever since then, it's just every race he's ran into problem after problem. And so yeah, it would not surprise me if he says, you know what, I think I'm done. This hasn't been my season, and we'll see if we'll come back and do it again next season.
Yeah, we don't really know what the schedule is going to look like here for the S1 series in Season 4 of it. It'll be coming up to a year ever since this series started during the summer of last year. It's been a pretty momentous time here on Apex Racing TV. Of course, the standout star has been Gregory Hoveson. He is still leading this race over Kyle Domark in P2, and Justin Barrera looking to pull off any sort of dive bomb move he can to split the Delta Sport duo there of the Lamborghinis that have spent... I gotta imagine if we took the time that we've spent on these broadcasts and figured out how long these two have spent in P1 and P2, it would be multiple hours. They have just been the absolute standout stars. They finished 1-2 in most of these races. Of the 11 races that we've done thus far of the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series here on Apex Racing TV, Gregory Hoveson has won 10 of them, and then Kyle Domark won that single one at Watkins Glen the end of last season, and that was again down to team orders. We mentioned that at the start of the broadcast. It was a little bit obvious, but we didn't want to say it at the time. But it was just a little bit of I wouldn't even say team orders either. It was just Gregory Hoveson, a little bit of sportsmanship to let his teammate grab P2 in the championship. Maybe we'll see something like that happen here. I would, just for the storyline's sake as a commentator, I think it would be nice to see Gregory Hoveson get that season sweep, because he very much has deserved it over these past 2 seasons. He's been a standout star, and even over his teammate Kyle Domark, he's just been absolutely dominant. So it would be a nice little fitting end to Season 3 if Gregory Hoveson was able to capture the season sweep, but we still have quite a long ways in this race to see if he'll get it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're just kind of watching him, and it seems like this is starting to follow a pattern here. Hoveson just basically is doing just enough to stay in the lead. There we go with a 2:04.002. That's about a second off of his qualifying time, and it just seems like as we get closer to that midway point, or toward the 30-minute mark, when it's time for him to come in for his pit stop, he just flips a switch and then he just stretches that gap out. I'm curious to see what Barrera can do here in P3. He's getting a really good run up through on the mountain, both going up and coming down. But it just seems like when they get down to Forest Elbow, he just maybe sends it just a little too hard in there, and he doesn't quite get the exit that he needs to make that pass on Domark, going through down Conrad into the chase.
There are some wonderful corner names on this track. It's always great to have a great selection of corner names. Hell Corner, Griffin's Bend, The Cutting, Quarry Corner, Skyline, The Dipper, Forest Elbow, which I think is one of the best corner names in racing, because it was named after a guy just scraping his elbow there, and it's a very wonderful course here. It's great in whatever car you drive, and we do have a selection of cars running at this track all throughout this week. We've got the Radical Esports Cup making their appearance here. It'll be week 11, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of round out the other official series, one of the only official series that's actually covered here on Apex Racing TV nowadays. One of them is actually the Formula 3.5s, which will be having a one-off broadcast towards the end of March, so stay tuned here on Apex Racing TV for that. We also have the Apex Racing Academy Formula 4 series that'll be at Bathurst this upcoming Saturday, so it's great to see Bathurst make its appearances on a bunch of these schedules. Again, it's one of my favorite tracks. I think one of the best tracks that we visited so far this season. What about you, Charles?
All right, here's the thing about this track with me. I love watching races at this track. It is fantastic to watch really, really good racing drivers race this track. Sadly, I am not one of those drivers. I cannot drive this track to save my life. It's just I've driven everything from GT4s to F3 cars to GTs to you name it. I've tried every car here that I've owned, and I just, for whatever reason, I don't have the talent. And that's really all it comes down to, is you have to have the talent to be precise and hit a mark over and over and over again in order to A, make it around the circuit, and then B, make it around the circuit with a good time. And so like I said, I love watching races. I'm going to be, sitting here with my, on our team stream for most of the entire 12 hours on Saturday. But I will not be turning a single lap at this track. So it's just how that's going to have to be. But it's one of those tracks. It's just really it's a driver's track. It really is. It's one of those that, once you get it down, it's CTMP on steroids. Once you get the hang of the track, because of the walls that are involved going up and down the mountain, it's just fantastic to watch.
It's watching a great driver drive around this track, whether it be qualifying for the Bathurst 12 hour, whether it be the Lap of Gods cars race here, the Bathurst 1000. Regardless of what series you're watching here, regardless of what cars you're seeing getting chucked around this racetrack, it's like watching an art. It's like watching Da Vinci paint something. It's like watching an artist at work. It is wonderful to see any sort of laps. My recommendation would be, I think it was Jensen Button set a lap in a 2008 McLaren F1 car around here, and that is absolutely beautiful. It's up there, as far as I'm concerned, with the 919 tribute laps around the Nordschleife when they set the lap record there. There's just certain laps and certain runs on race courses across the world that are absolutely magnificent to watch from start to finish. We've been neglecting what we're watching right now, and that is the Domark and Barrera fight, which hasn't been much of a fight. It's been more of a parade, if I'm being honest. The two of them are still fairly close on track. I think Barrera looks for a move here and there, but he's just not able to get it done.
No, not yet. No, he's but he hasn't made his nickname is Dive Bomber, and he hasn't done that yet. So that's good, right? He is being very patient. He's trying to calculate what he can do, what Domark's doing, seeing if there's a weakness anywhere that he can exploit coming up later in the race. But he's doing a good job of just maintaining the gap. He hasn't really lost any time. He's about somewhere between 3 and 6 tenths back, pretty much the entire lap. Give a little shout out to Jonathan Newman, who's in P4 in that Porsche, who's just only a couple of seconds back from this group and has done a really good job to try to do his best to keep pace with this group up front.
And Newman putting on a pretty good drive, much better than the one that he had in Mugello 2 weeks ago when he made his series debut in that very strange race with 5 cars. He got his first series top 5, but that's not really saying much because there's only 5 cars, but still, he looks like a pretty quick driver. He is keeping up with him quite well. He's actually dropping back a little bit, but still, unless Buenaventura and Spencer Retsma have a massive turn of pace here, he is pretty much guaranteed. Well, he's guaranteed to finish in the top 6, because then after that, it's Sammy Hendricks, who is the only car, well, besides himself, Buenaventura and Retsma, he's the only car of the ones that towed because of that turn 1 crash that are actually still in the race. Simon Attrell and Staropoli have left the session there, so not the way they want their evenings to go in any way, shape, or form. One thing we haven't mentioned, though, in this broadcast is actually fuel saving, because with this series, we do have a pit stop to negotiate with. They're probably going to be coming into the pits in about 12 minutes, I would have to say, maybe a little bit more. We always see varying strategies all across the field, whether it be 5 cars or 9 cars on track. Actually, currently, it's only 7 currently on the circuit, but still, we always see some varying strategies, but probably about 12 minutes is when we're going to see all the drivers come into pit road. I gotta wonder, though, how much of what we're seeing in terms of Barrera staying behind Domark, is he just playing the fuel saving game, or is he just not able to find a way to get past his adversary?
It could be both. I mean, both could be true. He could be doing some fuel saving, and he could just say, okay, I just don't see a way around him right now. So maybe if I fuel save, I can jump him during the pit cycle. Newman's, I don't know how much fuel he's saving. I will say this is if I remember correctly, I believe that's Sammy Hendricks' teammate. So if Hendricks beats him in this race, he'll never hear the end of it. I'm just going to promise you that. So with him already being a lap ahead. So yeah, I mean, it's possible he's doing some fuel saving. It looks like he's trying to keep the pressure on him, though. So I don't know how much fuel saving he's getting done. It might be interesting if we get maybe a little cockpit view down here at the end of Conrad, if we can hear maybe him doing a little lifting and coasting as we're watching the battle.
listen very closely. It's like a National Geographic session, listening to some bird calls here, heading into. Actually, I don't believe we will be able to. Ooh, I think I was just able to hear it slightly. Newman was definitely going for it. I think I heard some early lifts there, so I'm sure all these drivers are taking it a little bit careful. Tire management is never really an issue in these races. I say that because Gregory Hoverson, that's one of the reasons why he's your Season 2 and Season 3 champion. Whenever it comes time to a pit stop, you usually think, okay, yeah, these drivers are on fairly worn tires, so they're probably taking it a little bit easy. They're on low fuel, though, and Gregory Hoverson uses that low fuel to his advantage and sets absolute cookers of lap times whenever it comes to crunch time before a pit stop. We've seen him set so many fastest laps here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he currently has the fastest lap. I'll take a look at my live timing screen to see if he actually does right now. Yes, he does, at a 2:04.0. So only about a second off where he was in qualifying. It's actually a second and 1,000th off of what he was in the qualifying session. What is it with Gregory Hoverson and being about 1,000th off what he used to do? Maybe it's a sign of things to come, and maybe we'll have a photo finish where they're separated by 1,000th of a second. I guess the correct term would be manifesting a finish like that. That would be pretty cool to see to round off this season. Currently still staking his claim there. The gap between himself and Delmark for fastest lap of the race isn't too strong. Neither it is between Barrera there in P3. You can see all their fastest laps are separated by less than 1/10 of a second, and even Newman's still catching up to them fairly close lap time wise, all of them in the 2:04.1s and 2:04.0s. So right now the field is really separated into, you could say separated in three. We have the Hoverson, Domark, and Barrera fight, all separated by a little more than a second. Then you have Newman kind of in his own race here. Buenaventura and Retsma are, actually I say they're somewhat close. They're both in the 20s, but they're still separated by about 6 seconds. And then Sammy Hendricks there, your rear gunner of the field, currently is 1 lap down, and he'll be just counting away the laps, hoping to finish this season on track. And see Spencer Retzman there, one of the cars involved, one of the main cars involved in that first lap schism there. Luckily for him, he didn't have a terrible amount of damage. He got it fixed fairly quickly, but he still had to come into the pits a little bit early. Gregory Hoverson set that fastest lap of the race, so right as I was saying, he was fixated on those thousands. He actually improves his time there and goes below the 2:04 barrier. So Gregory Hoverson really staking his claim on this race, which is quite spread out by now.
Yeah, it is starting to spread out a little bit, but there's still that battle for P2 between Domark and Barrera, and I am watching kind of that gap. It's slowly coming down between Buenaventura and Retsma. It's just, Retsma just seems like he's got a little more pace than Buenaventura right now. So those guys, I think by the end of the race will at least be together, and maybe that Retsma can get that position. But this seems to be the biggest battle right here on track, and I think Hoverson is doing what he normally does, is just kind of laying back. I think he's got a little more left out there on the track. He's just not needing to use it right now, so he's basically driving out of his mirror and just kind of watching behind and making sure that the gap stays pretty consistent. But it's really kind of it's probably an advantage for him, but it's really a disadvantage for Domark, because he's not able to make up the stagger to get around him, and Retsma's just Barrera's just continuing to keep the pressure from behind.
I gotta imagine that Kyle Domark is the most stressed out driver involved in this series right now. He probably has the highest heart rate of any of the drivers in the field right now. His heart's beating quicker than Gregory Hoverson, your leader right now. I think his heart's probably beating much more than mine or your, Charles, right now here in this broadcast booth. I could probably say the same about our producer, Josh. He is under an immense amount of pressure right now. He needs to finish. I mean, I say he doesn't need to finish in second, because his one championship rival, Sammy Hendricks, is well farther back. But it would be quite disappointing if he dropped out of that P2 spot and broke up that Delta Sport 1-2. Newman, I believe, has come into the pits, a pretty early call to stop here. We'll see. Maybe that's a small little, possibly a glitch on our end, or maybe it's just actually he is coming into the pits.
He's actually in the pits. Yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing as well. I think he's actually in the pits. Yep, there he is.
There he is.
Yeah, so these kind of, I guess, the inverted, the undercut strategy. where you're going to take a little more fuel here, but you're going to get in clean air. And even though he really didn't have anybody around him, so he's just going to have some clean, a lot of open track to himself, so he can just kind of run his best laps and see if the early stop will allow him to make up some time.
Buenaventura in as well, so we already have 2 early pit stops. It's kind of the lighter version of what we saw at Daytona. Usually in this series, we'd expect pit stops around the 25-minute to 30-minute mark, maybe stretching a little bit further to the 35-minute mark. But at Daytona, we saw drivers coming in around the minute 15 barrier. So we're kind of seeing that flip strategy where they're actually having the longer run to close off this race rather than to start it off. So that could be what we're seeing here tonight. It's what I was going to say before, Daytona, but a little bit like we'll call Diet Daytona here with the strategy call.
Yeah, Daytona Light, we'll call it. Yeah, exactly. It's no, and I think it plays well to the Porsche, because I think the Porsche probably gets the best fuel mileage of the GT cars. So their stops are not going to be as long as most people if they did that strategy, just simply because they don't have to take as much fuel. I don't think they've burnt as much. So, like I said, it may work out to their advantage, where they can actually pick up a couple of seconds, because the extra fuel in the car just helps keep the car balanced as it was when you started the race. So, maybe that's a benefit, especially with the Porsches, who have a tendency to, as they get further into their tire life and lighter fuel, have a tendency to want to just kind of bury the nose when you get into braking and basically turn around in a circle. So maybe this helps the Porsches out by taking this early stop and getting a little extra fuel in the car.
We're kind of mentioning it as it being an earlier stop. We are past the halfway mark of this race, 23 minutes in to this 45-minute affair here, so we are past the halfway mark. So we say it's an early pit stop. It's early than what we usually expect from this series. Still, if you took it from an outside a racer's perspective, and we're like, yeah, usually for a race you'd pit at the halfway mark, they're basically pitting a little bit right before the halfway mark, so it's not the whole, and not the most shocking strategy if you think about it from that perspective, but still, we haven't seen many early pit stop races here from this series. Daytona is the only one that springs to mind, so we may see a split strategy call here. It would not shock me in the slightest if we see drivers like Gregory Hoverson, Domark, and Barrera stretch it out a little bit more, because they're running in their own zip code at this point. The gap between Barrera and Retsma is currently 30 seconds, so they don't really have anything to respond to. We could see them come in at the end of this lap. It wouldn't really surprise me if they just had a completely normal strategy, didn't know what everyone else was doing, and they're going to stick to that strategy. It would not shock me, though, if they were like, hey, we don't really need to respond. Hoverson and Domark are basically the locks for P1 and P2 in the championship. Maybe we'll see some kind of response here. I doubt it, though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's a little late in the game for that, but you never can tell. You never know what somebody may have something that just gets a little lucky and pans out, a little strategy call that helps them. But I noticed that the gap now is starting to stretch, and Domark with the fastest lap of the race, now with a 2:03.865. He's kind of stretching that gap back to Barrera. So it looks like the two Lamborghinis have started to kind of pick the pace up and check out a little bit to the rest of the field, which kind of tells me that it's getting close to their pit stop time, because I think that seems to be Hoverson's strategy more often than not, is once it's time to pit, he gets the hammer time call in his ear, and it's like, okay, let's go run a couple hot laps and bring it in and top it off and finish the race.
Now, will we see Domark possibly try and challenge his teammate Gregory Hoverson for the lead? Well, no, probably not. I would bet. I mean, Apex Racing TV does not support sports betting, but if I was a betting man, I would doubt very highly that these two would start to fights. We haven't really. The only fights that we've seen from them was at Daytona when they were just saying, "Yeah, let's make it cool for the broadcast," and they went side by side for one corner and then came across a line side by side just to put on a good show for us. So maybe, hey guys, if you're listening, it'd be nice to see some side by side action here without some sort of orchestrated stuff, because that'd be nice to see these two really, I wouldn't say come to blows, but start to battle without the gloves on.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it would be nice, but you always have to go back to that first rule of racing is don't wreck your teammate. So battling is cool. If you're going to do it maybe down Conrad or up the front straight, battling across the mountain is not smart. That's just not a winning strategy by any stretch of the imagination. So there's a time and place for it. This is probably neither the time nor the place, just to be honest about it. But it will be interesting to see how well Domark stays with him, though, because I am curious about that. It seems like Domark's got a little better every week. It seems like he's been able to at least stay with Hoverson during those races. So it'll be interesting as we see Hoverson just throw down the gauntlet there with a 2:03.67, another 0.2 faster that lap. He'd been running really consistently right at the 2:04 mark, within 2 or 3 hundredths of a second every lap. It just says, yep, okay, now it's time to start racing.
It's going to be a little bit of a back and forth. We're not going to see a back and forth between them on track. As he said, Charles, rule number 1 in racing is not crash into your teammates. I was kind of chuckling when I heard that in the ARA Formula 4 series here on Apex. We've seen 2 teammates battling for the lead in the late stages crash into each other 2 races in a row. So I was kind of snickering at that remark when I heard it. Yeah, I agree. If I was a team owner, I would find my 2 drivers and probably beat them with a weapon, if I'm being honest. I may get in trouble for saying that, but that's probably what I would do. I would not be very happy if 2 of my drivers crashed into each other 2 weeks in a row, battling for wins in the A main races, the points deciding races for that series. That would not be ideal. But instead of seeing a back and forth on the racetrack, well, we are seeing a back and forth on the racetrack, but it's going to be for the fastest lap of the race. We may see Kyle Domark respond. I think that gap has actually decreased a little bit. It looked like he was showing a lot of pace going through the top end of the circuit. We're seeing Newman now in 5th, quite a long ways back, 40 seconds separating the top 5 currently, with a massive gap between Barrera and Rennsport that's still increasing now, about 32 seconds separating all those drivers. Mitch Buenaventura is currently the rear gunner of this field. Sammy Hendricks, currently in P7, is in the pits 2 laps down. I don't believe he is actually disconnected from this session. Wouldn't be too shocked if he did, though. He's a driver that I've seen on the, as we see now, your leaders are coming in. Hoverson, Domark, and Barrera have pulled into the pits, so we'll see. Maybe Hoverson will extend that gap even more. We've seen in these races, even though he's been punching that hole in the air, leading in these races, he's always been able to get better fuel mileage. I don't know what kind of video game steroid, shall we say, he is on, but he has been absolutely untouchable in this series. So we'll see how these pit stops are as they now go into their box. Hopefully Domark does not overshoot his box. That would be an unfortunate mistake there and would probably fall him into the clutches there of Barrera in P3.
Yeah, I'm curious. Newman, the last couple of laps before the pit stop, was actually running faster than Barrera. He was not as fast as the front 2, but he was faster than Barrera. I wondered how much time he's been able to make up during the course of that.
We'll see. It's going to be, yeah, there you go. There's Newman exiting Hell Corner right now. Hit that curb that thankfully did not spin him out, unlike the drivers earlier on in this race. But still a pretty big gap that Newman has to close. I doubt very highly that he'll be able to close it, but still, we could see it. We could see it.
Could see it. Yeah, I mean, look, that the BMW has been. I don't know if it has been that he's been basically running at his peak speed, or peak lap times, but he wasn't able to just kind of match once Hoverson and Domark picked up the pace. Barrera wasn't able to come with him. He has actually picked up a little bit of time now. He did have a really good pit stop and picked up about a second on Domark, so he's closed the gap just from basically and it wasn't the time in the pits, it was the time coming into the pits and leaving the pits. So great job by Barrera to try and at least get a little something out of that. But the BMW seemed like in the later we get into this race, the worse those fronts are going to be. So I'm hoping he's done a good job of saving those front tires so he can push on them for the last 9 minutes or so of this race.
This is a funny shot going down the Conrad straightaway and seeing the massive size of that BMW compared to the two tiny little Lamborghinis farther up the road. It was a running, I wouldn't say a running joke, but it was definitely a little bit of a meme in both the sim racing and endurance racing community back when the BMW was first, I guess, updated, shall we say, in real life, and it came out with a new design, and everyone was joking about how massive that thing is, but that thing just looks so huge compared to the tiny little, well, I say tiny, they're still big cars. The Lamborghinis farther up the road look like small little insects compared to that BMW.
Yeah, if you get a chance to go back and see some highlights of the actual 12 hours from last weekend, you can see a BMW M4 doing a very nice tail slide through the cutting as he was trying to work his way around. I believe it was a Mercedes GT4 car. So it was that's right, it was. Thank you, Josh, for correcting me. It was a Jetta. It was a Jetta GT4 car, and just right through here was basically riding the wall with the rear of the car. Some lucky fan got the spoiler and proudly displayed it on Twitter, I believe yesterday. So yeah, it's quite a sight to behold. But yeah, the BMWs have always been big. The old GTEs, the M8 seems like it will always just a monster as well in comparison to the rest of the GTE cars. So BMW is not really concerned about low profile cars. They just want something that looks like what you would go buy on Sunday afternoon, and that's the way they're going to make them, and they're still pretty quick.
Very quick looking race cars, and very quick race cars. A little bit of a flying brick in terms of the looks themselves, but it's still a pretty quick car. It definitely looks like a BMW. That's one thing. That's it's something that's maintained in GT3 racing compared to some other series where the cars you see racing around the track at least maintain the looks of a BMW or a Lamborghini or Ferrari or an Audi that you can just buy in a dealer if you have a spare couple of $1,000, sometimes maybe even over $100,000.
Yep.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Lamborghinis aren't they based off the Huracan? Maybe I'm wrong. But are they based off the Huracan?
No. Is it the Huracan? Yeah, I believe it is. It is the Huracan. Yeah. Yeah. So
our producer Josh, it's an Audi R8 chassis. That does make sense since Audi owns Lamborghini.
I believe it's the same V10 engine as well. So. And yeah, it's based on I was going to say the Aventador, but I think it is the Huracan. I think he's absolutely right. So yeah, so that's they're all based off of what I guess you would consider a production supercar. The only ones that really you can't go by are the not in this race obviously, but the prototypes, the new hypercar class that is in WEC and IMSA. But yeah, all these are based off of, I guess, production, albeit probably limited production cars, but production cars nonetheless.
I have seen quite a lot of Lamborghini Huracans. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Lamborghini Huracan is the highest grossing, I say grossing, it sounds like I'm describing a movie. It's the highest selling Lamborghini in terms of the units sold and manufactured. There is a dealer right by me in Philadelphia called FC Kerbeck. It is a Cadillac dealer. They sell a bunch of high-end cars, and some of the cars they actually sell are Lamborghinis, so you can imagine jackbud drivers, shall we say, going down the roads of New Jersey and Pennsylvania in their Lamborghini Huracans that they're leasing from this dealer right near what used to be a flea market as well. So it's a very common car. I've seen a few Lamborghini Huracan. I don't think I've seen many other Lamborghinis though in my life. It's still a pretty striking car though. You also have that beautiful V10 engine. It's nice to have a collection of V10s. You could hear the Audis because Sammy Hendricks has not rejoined this race after the pit stop that he had, so I believe he has called it an evening as well. Currently 5 laps down. I believe he'll be going 6 laps down now. And then Simon Attrell and the other Audi punched out of the session fairly early on. I saw I think it was an Instagram post from Simon, because I did follow him. Well, I follow him on Instagram, and he was talking about how he was trying to qualify for the Porsche. I'm trying to figure out the name here. It was a Porsche run series here on iRacing. He was trying to qualify for the Canadian version of that series. I'll have to fact check myself and get the name right. Yeah, the Carrera Cup. Yep, there you go. Thank you very much, Charles. Yep. And he was trying to qualify for that, but he said he was going to be out of town for the next few days, so he was only able to qualify for tonight. So I think he was getting a bit more practice in that Porsche to try and qualify for that series. I can't really blame him after the way that start went for him. Fairly high attrition in this race, we must say. Buenaventura and Retsma, the tail runners of the field right now, were involved in that schism. They picked up just a minor bit of cosmetic and aerodynamic damage, but it was damage nevertheless. That slowed up their cars quite a significant amount during that first stint, which is the reason why they're over a half a minute behind your leader, Gregory Ovesen, right now. He's extended a 1.1 second gap between himself and his teammate. And then we have Sammy Hendricks, who is actually now punched out of the session, so he is now out of it. So we still have only 6 cars on track. Sammy Hendricks, Simon Attrell, and Eric Starpoli there, the 3 retirements from this race. And Curio there at the tail end of the field did not take the start. Pretty high attrition rate, we must say. I'm trying to do that. It'll be 60%. That would be based off 10 cars. So it'd be 60% based off 10 cars. Still pretty high attrition, probably the highest we've seen from the series thus far.
I mean, just watch the 12-hour this weekend. You'll have about, there'll be a 50 car field or so. You'll lose 10 of them the first 5 laps, and then they'll just slowly die off. It's just because of the nature of the track. It's just such a difficult track. I just want to highlight something that we were talking about a little earlier at the beginning of the race. So fastest lap of the race, Hovesen with a 2:03.48. Second fastest lap of the race, Spencer Retsma in the Ferrari, 2:03.65. So the Ferrari does have some pretty good legs in it after all. He just got some bad luck at the start of the race.
Yeah, I gotta imagine if he wasn't involved in that schism, if that schism didn't happen, we would have an absolute balls-to-the-wall fight for that final podium position. I don't think Barrera would have been in that spot, because as much as he is a very serviceable race car driver, much better than anything I would be able to do in the sim, compared to the drivers like Starpoli and even Retsma for that matter, setting those very quick laps, I think he would definitely have a challenge on his hand to try and hold on to that P3. Unfortunately for us, that crash took out a lot of the contenders at the start of this race, so Barrera currently in a fight of his own. Pretty big gap between himself and Domark, separating P2 and P3, and then Newman back there in 4th that we just barely caught going through the dipper, going through, I believe that was turn 15, 16, and 17. I have my track map up, and it is like microscopic. I have very poor vision as it is. My feet, which barely work as feet, would work better than my eyes as eyes. But still, like, I can see like a small little clumpling of pixels, and I can roughly recognize what numbers the corners are at this track. But still going through, it feels relentless in these GT3 cars. I don't know if you get this experience driving around here, Charles, and the times that you do decide to drive around this race course. No, going between Skyline and Forest Elbow, it just feels like you are not in conscious control of your car, and you're just trying to scrub off speed and avoid hitting the wall. I don't know if you get that feeling as well.
Absolutely. I think I'm the only person alive that can actually get a 1X in the dipper without hitting the wall. I mean, it's just, I think I've got a habit of doing that. But yeah, I'm not a claustrophobic person by nature, but you know, these cars at the speeds they're going and the amount of grip that they have, or sometimes lack of grip that they have, in those sections of track, and you're talking about going downhill, coming off Skyline through the Dipper, down all the way down into Forest Elbow. It's absolutely mind-boggling how people can do that fast, right? Because I'm a nervous wreck. That's another reason I don't drive this track. It's because of that. It's just there's like I said, there's just no room for error. And I don't want to take anything away from Barrera. I think he drove a fantastic race. I just don't think that this track. I don't think the BMW suits this track, or the track doesn't suit the BMW. I think he's done a very, very good job. But yeah, if Rennsport had been up there, I think both he and maybe even Domart would have their hands full with that Ferrari. I just don't think that the track is a BMW track, and but hats off to Barrera. That's what he's been driving all season. He hasn't changed. He said, I'm going to drive this. This is what I'm comfortable with, and he's done a really good job with it.
Continuing the theme of over-exaggerated stats, as we're seeing a battle, I was just about to mention it beforehand, Mitch Buenaventura maybe had a little bit of a slowdown there, or just decided to not fight Spencer Retsma as he moves up into the top 5. I was going to say right before we saw that battle flare up between the two of them, expecting it to flare up going down the Conrad straightaway this time by, continuing the theme of over-exaggerated stats after we had Megan Overstreet crash in the Ray Esports Series race last night when I described it as a 14 bajillion G impact. That BMW weighs about 1,000 tons. So the fact that Barrera has managed to race it as hard as he has, that's a beautiful move there from Spencer Retsma. Had a fantastic run. I thought it was a slowdown. He just had a great run coming through turn 10 and got the move done, heading into Skyline, going through basically a glorified racing alleyway going down the hill there. So beautiful move there from Spencer Retsma to move up into P5. We'll see, maybe Buenaventura can try and reclaim that position. I doubt it though. Buenaventura, fast driver again, but Spencer Retsma in that Ferrari has one of the fastest laps of the race. And continue, you could see how big of a pace gap they had there last time by. Retsma at a 2:04.0, and Buenaventura was in the 2:06s. So that just shows you the pace gap between the two of them. And even in their best laps as well, separated by about 9/10. So I'm sure at this stage, Spencer Retsma is just looking to drive away. We may be taking the white flag next time, but I believe we will be taking the white flag next time by. And it'll be possibly, I don't want to pull off the worst commentator jinx in the world, but it could be Gregory Hoveson getting the season sweep. We'll see him entering Forest Elbow here in just a few moments' time. We've seen a few drivers whack that wall, get very close to it. Gregory Hoveson did, even though he has a 1.4 second lead on his way to close off what would be a perfect season for your champion. He is still pushing that thing to the absolute limit. Shows you that that man is a true racer. It hasn't been... It's been a race as for Dorncher. Oh no, Spencer Retsma, I think, has had some kind of off. Oh, no. I believe he's actually crashed out of that top 5 spot. Maybe it's a small little connection issue on our end. Maybe he just popped out very briefly.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm not sure what in the world happened. We may try and salvage a replay to see what in the world might have happened to him. Gregory Hoveson taking the white flag this time by. You can see the white flag is in the air for your leader as he sets the fastest lap of the race, 2:02.9. Wow. A 2:02.972. That's faster than he went in qualifying. This man is absolutely untouchable. And went about, it was about a little over, I think it was 1.2 seconds between himself and his teammates last time by. This is, I think we may
there it is.
Have a
there's the Ferrari in front.
There's Retsma. We may see just a quick little shot. Oop, I think
he just, I don't know. Did it, could he, could we have a, could that be another disqualification? Could he have gotten enough?
Ooh.
I mean, because he did, he was wide coming on the Skyline.
This is replay.
That's the replay
that he
from
pulled
the
off.
pass. Yep.
I'll tell you what, even if he gets disqualified, we'll remember him for that. So I think this may be it.
So clean there. Clean there. He was on the track. Yeah, it's got to be a hardware, or not hardware fail, but a connection failure.
Yeah, a connection failure, or possibly a UFO abduction. That could have been what we just saw. Our field now has been whittled down to 5 cars. Buenaventura will be the last of the drivers to take the finish in about 40 seconds after your leaders do. We're going through very spread out, 2.5 seconds now, separating the Delta Sport teammates of Hovesen and Dilmark. Newman running just off the podium. Was able to close that gap, I will say, between himself and Justin Barrera, but just not enough time for him to close that gap, which is about 2.2 seconds now, as they're going to take the checkered flag in a few moments' time. Gregory Hovesen, he has essentially been flawless ever since the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series came here to Apex Racing TV last September. He's going to round the final corner and book it. You can make it 6 for 6. Gregory Hovesen pulls off the clean sweep to take not only the championship, but every single race win from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series, and he's celebrating with some nice burnouts here. Hopefully, he doesn't spin that car out and get hit by one of his adversaries here, going down the start-finish straightaway. Oh, listen to that beautiful V10. That is absolutely awesome. He will be cooking those rear tires to a crisp, but he has earned the right to burn that thing to the ground. Donuts, there we go in turn number 1 for your champion, your race winner, and your clean sweeper, Gregory Hovesen. Whoop, he nearly hit the barrier there, trying to get turned around. Gregory Hovesen, he has a lot of experience winning. He may not have a whole lot of experience doing some donuts, but this is his time to practice. He has the right to show off here that beautiful gold, black, and white car. That's a beautiful livery with the teal accents. Ooh, nearly got hit by Buenaventura, and there he goes into the barriers. He is a very fast race car driver, but just doesn't have the experience doing the donuts yet. That's a shame.
That was a nice set of 11s.
The one mistake he makes all season long.
Yeah, that was a nice set of 11s he did in the front stretch, though. That was all good. It was all good. I mean, the race is over. Season's over. You know, we'll build a new race car for next season. That's fine.
Yeah, that is the one mistake he makes all season long at in his celebration after taking his 6th checkered flag and his 11th of the 12 races we've done here on Apex Racing TV. That record is unbeatable.
I've got this feeling that Mr. Barrera is about to attempt something, and I think that might be the reason Josh has jumped over to him as he's coming around, coming down into Forest Elbow. I don't know that he can do this. Well,
can he do it?
They
reworked all the physics with the off-track stuff here in iRacing.
That doesn't mean
if he hits that gravel trap, I mean, you got to give him the respect for it. He didn't have the best race in the world. Still grabbed the last podium position. We'll see. Maybe he'll try and do it here. Oh, he's actually slowing down a little bit. Maybe he is, and he's not going to do it.
Okay.
I think he was thinking on doing it and then realized, oh yeah, the gravel's been reworked. That's one of the worst parts. I wish like every single gravel trap in iRacing could be fixed, all but that one.
Except where that
actually,
one,
just be able to ping, send it off into the ether. That BMW flying through the air would be an absolute majestic sight to round off this race.
I kind of like Josh's idea. Just put a strip of tarmac down through there. Just right down the middle of it and just give them a ramp and let them go, you know? And,
it's a runway.
Yeah, that's right.
I think there's like only one car that he can do it in nowadays. I believe it's one of the rallycross cars. So
I was going to say, I think the trucks,
cool.
the trophy trucks, you can get away with it as well. But yeah.
I will say one thing, though. We have the Summer Olympics coming up later on this year, and maybe I'll have to talk to the people here at Apex Racing TV to bring some kind of, like, long jumping event, I guess would be the correct nomenclature for that sport. The long jump finals here at Bathurst. That would be fantastic. Stay tuned here on Apex Racing TV. Hit the subscribe button and do all that, because that may be an event that I try and bring here on Apex Racing TV later on in the summer. But as for this race, Gregory Hovesen, win number 6, 6 for 6 on this season. He takes another checkered flag, 2 seconds ahead of his teammate Kyle Domark there in P2. I believe Hovesen also took the fastest lap as well, so just absolutely crushing from the Delta Sport driver coming out of Canada with a number 115. That's going to be Justin Dive Bomber Barrera finishing this race. Number 419 car, he finishes on the podium. Jonathan Newman finishes this race in 4th. Mitch Buenaventura rounds out the drivers to actually take the checkered flag. That's Spencer Retzma 2 laps down after that alien abduction coming through turn number 10 with very little time left in the race. He ends up in P number 7. That's Sammy Hendricks and Simon Attrell and Eric Staropoli, all the drivers that did take the start but punched out very early on, and that's going to be Curio there in the Ferrari who did actually not even take the qualifying session. He bailed out during practice, but not the most exciting race in the world, if I'm being honest. I think, fingers crossed, we saw an entertaining broadcast here on Apex Racing TV. We've got action we've got action all around the clock here on Apex, whether it be the Ray Esports series that we had last night, whether it be the Apex Racing League Prototype Championship coming on later on this evening, and not later on this evening, later on tomorrow. That'll be a nice broadcast there on Thursday, and also the Apex Racing League GT3 series. That'll be good. I believe they're also racing at Bathurst as well, so that'd be good if you want to get another, if you want itch your scratch of GT3 action here at this track. That would be a good way to do it after the Bathurst 12, this race, and some of the other action we have here on Apex Racing TV. But the season has now officially come to a close. It's Gregory Hovesen, your champion here for season number 3. And Charles, when you decide to join this series here before we start off the season back in December, I sent you a message saying that Gregory Hovesen was really the gold standard, and I think that was a gold standard performance from that driver here tonight.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Gregory did a fantastic job all season. Didn't really put a foot wrong week in, week out. Just drove a fantastic race. Obviously, class of the field. Domark did a great job as well. We're right behind him every step of the way. And the rest of these guys, there's some really good racers in here, and just some horrible luck. Where it be, Jake Luther, I think, Aaron Luther at CTMP back in our first race of the season or second race of the season. Star Poli just having a great run at Daytona and then just getting wiped out as they're running down into turn 1. Rennsport had some really good runs. Barrera's had some really good runs. Newman looks like he's going to be, if he comes back, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with as well. Had some good last couple of races. Did a really good job of just kind of staying with the pack and running his race. So yeah, it was very entertaining from start to finish. And so we'll look forward to see what the future holds for the S1 Racing Series.
Gotta imagine heading into the future. I said this at the end of Season 2 when I wrapped up that broadcast. I said, who may be the champion of Season 3? I think the question at the end of this season now is, who can defeat Gregory Hovesen? Who can break up that Delta Sport duo? And, they've grabbed the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series, and they have made it crack over their knee with a completely sickening crack. It really has been. They have put on an absolute dominant drive all season long. They've taken every single win of these broadcasts here on Apex Racing TV. We'll see what can happen here in Season 4 for the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. But as for tonight, as for this season, and as for this race at Bathurst, I think that just about does it here. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Michelle joining me in the commentary booth all season long, and Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, doing a fantastic job there week in and week out. I say thank you all so very much for watching, and have a great rest of your night.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.